Hello. Hey, I'm John Swartz. I'm with TechStrong Group, and I'm looking forward to this interview with Rinki. Now, you are the Chief Security Officer of Upwind and founding partner at Lockstep. From what I understand, you previously served as Vice President and CISO at Twitter and held senior positions at a number of places, including Rubrik, Palo Alto Networks, IBM. Your resume is so long, by the way, that I want to leave time to ask questions, but it's a very impressive resume, deep in expertise that you bring to private sector and corporate brands. So welcome. And if we start out, I have a couple of questions I wanted to ask you, and let's go from there. Does that sound good?
That sounds great. Thanks for having me.
Okay. Yeah, sure. Absolutely. So let's start off with this. How have you seen attackers use AI to scale their operations, whether through phishing, malware, social engineering, beyond what was possible before?
Yeah, attackers are operating at a startup scale speed, and AI is lowering the barrier to entry. There's no question about it, right? Phishing has always been an issue. It's already been pretty difficult to identify a phishing attack. But now with AI generated emails that are personalized, localized, and error free, they make them far more convincing. We've seen polymorphic malware that can self-mutate to evade traditional detection through malware. And then finally, social engineering, we're seeing like voice cloning, deepfakes that are reshaping the business email compromise, making it harder even just to trust a phone call. I think AI is giving attackers a playbook to move faster, cheaper, and at scale than we've ever seen before.
Do you think compromised identities have surpassed malware as the most common initial access or threat vector? And if so, why?
I absolutely think so. And identity is the new perimeter. When you think about credentials, tokens, and session cookies, they're easier to steal than building malware. And once you're in, you bypass most endpoint defenses. Credential theft and session hijacking have far surpassed traditional malware as the front door for attackers. And although malware is still relevant, identities are more open doors with less effort. So compromised identities are the attacker's shortcut to privilege. And so we've been seeing this for a while. And I think it's why we're seeing so much focus on identity in the market today.
How are misconfigurations and over permissioned accounts widening the blast radius of cloud native breaches?
The cloud is an amazing, it's so powerful, and it's giving developers a lot to unlock that they didn't have before, but it's also can be pretty unforgiving. Over permissioned identities are like master keys. One compromise can unlock everything. And we know this, and we've seen breaches as a result of this. Misconfigurations often expose data or services unintentionally. And even attackers that are after Bitcoin mining, which still happens today, they'll get in through misconfigurations. Together, they let attackers pivot laterally faster than ever. In cloud, mistakes just compound, misconfigs and identity sprawl turn into breaches.
So we've been talking a little bit about the downside. Let's kind of turn it a little bit more positive, and let me ask you what excites you about the use of AI in terms of defensive security measures, and where do you think we're still too trusting or blind to its risks?
I think what's exciting is what has burdened security leaders, security engineers, is that we have these tools, hard-coded detection rules, but what's missing is context. And so AI enables contextual detection, which I think is super exciting. And it's where we're seeing a ton of value from an AI perspective in cyber. And so you move from reactive alerts to more predictive insights, and it helps surface these combinations that together in runtime can be really risky. So you think about a risky identity plus a vulnerable workload plus an exposed secret, and you're talking about really kind of a risky situation. And that's the kind of context that you need. And that's the kind of thing that you want to action right away. And that's what AI is really, really helping with. I think around when you talk about blind spots, blind trust in AI can introduce bias and false confidence. Too many teams assume that AI said it, so it must be right. And that's not necessarily the case. AI can be a complete force multiplier for defenders, but only if it's paired with human judgment today. That might change down the line where the human may not need to be in the loop. But I think today, with where AI is, you still have to kind of keep an eye on it.
Yes, good answer. How does runtime detection factor into identity security, especially when it comes to lateral movement or session hijacking?
Static identity checks aren't enough anymore. Runtime tells you who's doing what in the moment, right? And this is extremely important when it comes to session hijacking. Whether it's a valid session that suddenly shows anomalous behavior, like impossible travel or unusual access patterns, um, that's where you want to know. And if lateral movement starts, runtime telemetry is often the first to catch it. And so when you have identity without runtime, it's like locking your front door but leaving the windows open. And so you really want to have runtime detection in your identity. And runtime, I think, in general, right? You want to know what's happening at runtime. That's where you're going to stop the attacks. And I think, when you think about where the industry has shifted, it started at let's look at configurations, let's lock that down. Now we're saying runtime is so important to lock down as well.
Do you see AI as a net positive in SOC operations, or are we at risk of replacing analyst judgment with automation too soon?
I think when you use AI to reduce alert fatigue, surface high confidence signals, and speed investigations up, that's a net positive. I think if we replace human intuition too early, we'll miss the subtle context that only an analyst sees. And that's a risk that we would run. So I think like the SOC of the future is AI assisted, not AI replaced.
Um, so we've heard so much about agentic AI. It seems as if there's an announcement every other day from every conceivable vendor. It's inevitable. It's coming. It's gaining traction. It's probably going to take off the next year or so. Where should the industry draw the line between human oversight and machine autonomy and security workflows?
I I 100% believe the future is going to be agentic. I think we're a ways away from that, but I do believe that, and I think because of that, there's going to be massive data explosion that happens, and for that, we're going to need solutions that are very uniquely catered to that data explosion. I think today machines should recommend, not fully decide. I think of it as a human in the loop for escalation,
Yes.
compliance, and business impacting actions. I think automation is great for response playbook, but not yet for nuanced judgment calls. So I like strongly believe that autonomy is fine for containment, but humans still own the consequences.
So do you think in every scenario moving forward, there's going to be some sort of human element interjected into as autonomous as the system is, there always will be some sort of human oversight?
I think like there will have to be a human in the loop and there will have to be a lot of auditing that's done. And I think that's going to be
Mhm.
extremely important. Now, I think when you move to the future, where the bar is on that may change, that you may gain confidence on certain things where you felt there had to be a human in the loop. You now feel that your models are trained and your agents are at a point where you don't need that anymore. But there's always going to be some level as you get more sophisticated, the bar might get higher, but you are still going to have humans involved.
Sure. Do you believe AI will ultimately tilt the balance of power towards defenders or attackers in the long run?
I think in the short term, attackers are going to adapt faster. They have fewer rules. I think in the long term, I hope to see defenders win. That's why I'm in this game, because we can apply AI across visibility, detection, and resilience at scale. I think attackers will win the battles. I think AI can help defenders win the war. And if we move just as fast, and that's the key, right? I think one of the big issues, especially when you think about large enterprise, how do we move quickly? How do we move fast? A lot of times because companies are big and there's lots of regulation and mandates and things like that, it takes some time to catch up. And so I think like we're really going to have to think about the speed at which we move and where do we stay agile and where do we have the right checks and balances.
Yeah, I mean that whole element of AI and the speed, that's what I think staggers or scares so many people. Like something, it not only accelerates productivity and efficiency, but they're on the flip side, if something were to go awry, there's that great fear that it would spread even faster. and ultimately lead to something that could be lead to legal action or some sort of corporate embarrassment, actually.
Exactly. I think that's absolutely right. And that's why there's a lot of, I think right now, risk aversion. And I think that's going to change though.
Okay. Do you think, I mean, this is kind of something I'm just curious about, just in terms of regulation. Do you think that we might see any of that anytime soon in the US, or some sort of oversight, especially in heavily regulated industries and involving the use of AI, or is that something we just can't really bank on?
I think we will see. I mean, we've already seen some executive orders come in to enable AI, but I do think that we're going to see some kind of. But like as most regulation and bodies work, it's like very delayed behind kind of the adoption, and just like anything else, like cloud and all these other things. I think there will be. It's just going to take time.
Okay. Excellent. So I'm going to ask you some rapid fire questions. I've got just a handful, and you can expound on them. You don't have to give me a 1 or 2 word response. So feel free to do that. But here's the first one. What is one tool you couldn't live without as a CSO?
I would say like you wouldn't maybe call this a tool, but I think one thing that's invaluable for me is my network of peers. I don't think there's any product that beats practitioner intelligence and that network.
Okay. What's the first thing you check in a post-breach investigation?
I think most of the breaches that I've seen in my career, the first thing is identity logs, who got in and what did they touch.
Okay. What's your biggest buzzword, or what's the biggest buzzword in security right now that makes you roll your eyes?
I mean, everything is an AI company right now, and so I think everyone would agree that
Um,
AI is the biggest buzzword. It's a legitimate buzzword too, whether you want to admit it or not. And I think there's a lot of cool companies that are doing really unique things, and I'm excited about it. I also think you do have to dig deeper because there's a lot of misuse of the word AI, and folks that are not actually doing AI, it's just automation, and they're packaging it as AI. So I do think you have to look into what is it when they mean AI and what's the impact it actually has that's going to bring benefits to the company at the end of the day.
okay. Okay. Passkeys in 5 years. Is that standard everywhere or still in transition?
I wish it was a standard still in transition. I think standards move slower than attackers, and I think passkeys are going to take some time. But I mean, I've already seen lot more standardization around passkeys than in this past year than I did before that. So hopefully there will be like rapid scale of it, but I think it's going to still be in transition.
Another question is, will agentic AI reduce burnout for security teams, or create more fires to fight?
I think both. I think it's going to remove the grunt work, but introduce new risks that we'll have to fight.
All right. Hey, tremendous knowledge, Rinki. You blew through these incredibly fast, very insightful. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it, and I hope those who viewed this found it as useful as I did. Thanks again.
Thank you so much for having me.